Our speaker today, we are honored to have Ms. Veronica Tan, Director from CSA, Mr. David Mark, our BSI Global Assurance for Digital Trust, Ms. Ada Lim, our Operation Deliver Manager, and myself here. This is the agenda today. We will walk you through how to build trust in your cybersecurity journey with BSI by sharing who we are, discuss on the evolving threat landscape, what are the CSA Cyber Essential Trust Mark and Essential Trust Mark, and what you need to know to get the certificate and how to do, and also by sharing case study and the best practice. Lastly, the top 3 things you need to do at the end of the webinar. So David, please, now will take us through about BSI. David, please.
Thank you, Veronica, for joining us. Thank you, Alice, for the great introduction. And mostly, thanks again to all of you for joining us today. There's a lot of words here on the screen. I don't want to spend too much time talking about us, so I'll pick out some of the key things here. The key word to associate with BSI is trust. Where does that trust come from? From our knowledge. We wrote the guidelines for information security that became the international standard, ISO 27001. We've got a global team of cyber experts, but we also have a local team that understands your business. Our experience as well, we're the first national standards body, a founding member of ISO, but also our practical experience with cybersecurity. I've been working with the Cyber Essentials scheme in the UK for 6 years and working with other schemes around the world, such as the Cyber Maturity Model certification in the USA and others through the Middle East and India. But the most important reason what our trust is really based on is our purpose. We are independent of government, independent of shareholders, but we have a mandate to work for the public good. As you might have seen from that video, our role, and for me, that's all about digital trust. That's what I think of every morning when I wake up. How can I help build better global digital trust? So how do we do this? How do we actually live that purpose? That's by shaping, sharing, and supporting best practice. And this makes us a very unique organization. So not only do we have the standards body and that knowledge sharing, but we then also reinforce that with our assurance business, providing training, assessment, testing, certification. And finally, we also have consulting as well that really delivers a complete solution. And when I talk about global, I mean that truly. Yes, Alice, please go to the next slide. That picture there on the next slide, the global picture, really shows our global reach. All these things you see here, from creating and sharing standards and providing that assurance down to that consulting. Most of our clients, and indeed our own people, are based outside of the UK. And that really enables us to bring global knowledge and then focus it right down to what's important for you. So our team here, our excellent team, Alice, Ada, and the others, have the benefit of that global organization behind them to really bring insight and make sure we're fully prepared, delivered to support you. So on to the next slide, please, Alice, and I'll just briefly summarize. The why BSI. Effectively, we're talking 100 years of experience, a mission to work for the public good with the highest level of integrity. Global reach, global knowledge, global experience. Like I said, Cyber Essentials in the UK, payment card industry, data security, all kinds of wide range, all sitting around that cybersecurity and digital trust space. But the key reason to work with us is our people. We are committed to supporting you and the team, as I said, they're in Singapore and my global team as well. We're here to support you through this vitally important and quite often very tricky stage of building cyber resilience into your organization. So at this point, Alice, I'll hand back to you.
Thanks, David, for sharing. And why we are here today is because BSI is the appointed certification body by CSA for the Essential Mark and Trust Mark. So hereby, I would like to invite Ms. Veronica to share her presentations. Veronica, please.
Hi everyone, just give me a moment while I load the slides. Okay, so title of the presentation, very timely. I think David talked about trust, and today we're here to talk about a trust and competitive advantage. So I think a quick overview of the various CSA initiatives that we have put in place to help enterprises who are at different stages of the journey. Let's start with the left, where generally we're referring to enterprises that are just starting in the cybersecurity journey. Generally, it all starts with awareness, and usually the business leaders and the bosses need to be aware about how cybersecurity is not just a technical or technology issue, but also part of the business risk management. And therefore, you need to think about it from the perspective of your business investment. And this is where we have published cybersecurity toolkits that are targeted at business leaders so that they can understand why it's important, especially when the business goes digital. Now, assuming that the bosses are convinced, the next stage is to take active action. And this is where sometimes the smaller enterprises in general may not have the resources. CSA has developed toolkits for employees and for personnel managing IT in small organizations, so that if you are not so familiar with cybersecurity and you need help getting started and you want to take action, these would serve as useful resources for you as reference. Then on the right, we're really talking about companies that have put in place cybersecurity and they're now ready to communicate cybersecurity as a competitive advantage. And this is where the certification programs come in. So we have just launched our cybersecurity certification for enterprises called Cyber Trust and Cyber Essentials. So earlier on, David talked about Cyber Essentials, and this was launched by UK NCSC, the National Cybersecurity Centre, quite a few years ago. We liked very much the concept that they had in place, and that's why when we developed this in Singapore, we also looked very much at the UK model. I will just talk about briefly the benefits of certification. Number one is that when you go for a certification, there is a robust assessment process put in place, and it helps to become a visible label to show that you have put in place a certain level of cybersecurity practices. This would help you to build trust with your customers because you can give the assurance of being cyber safe. And this in turn becomes a competitive edge for your business and helps you to stay differentiated from your competitors. Now, why is this trust and certification important? The past few years have seen a marked increase in supply chain attacks in the industry. When we talk about a supply chain attack, you may think that you are protected against it because you have put in place all the key cybersecurity measures. However, a supply chain attack happens when you are attacked indirectly through a vulnerability or exploit in your supply chain partner. Typically, this could be your supplier or some other business partners that you transact with. It is becoming a bit of an issue and increasing in the past 2 years. And increasingly, we see that businesses are also starting to be aware about supply chain attacks and starting to ask their suppliers, are you cyber safe? How are you making sure that you take care of your cybersecurity posture so that I do not get attacked as a result of a supply chain issue? And we do find that trust does become an important factor in purchasing decision. This is a slide showing some statistics from an AXA survey that shows that generally consumers would avoid doing business with an organization if there is an experience of a cyber attack in the past year. And 9 out of 10 actually consider the trustworthiness of a business prior to purchasing a product or service. So I think this is where cybersecurity certification comes in and is useful for you as a business to transform it into a competitive advantage. First, let me cover a little bit about the Cyber Essentials mark that we have in Singapore. So I think the philosophy is very much similar to the one in UK, where it looks at cyber hygiene measures and to help enterprises stay protected from the majority of common cyber attacks. So typically when we think about cybersecurity, the temptation is to think about 100% security and protect against every single thing. However, this invariably becomes expensive for customers and also out of reach for the enterprises. For this reason, generally what the industry has done for cyber hygiene is to actually list and prioritize the measures so that companies that are smaller and less resources know what to focus on first. So in this case, there are 5 major categories of measures: assets, secure, protect, update, backup, and respond. This is a certification that is a duration of 2 years, and this is being done, assessment is being done by an independent assessor. So this will be in the form of a desktop assessment. Now, if Cyber Essentials Mark is about cyber hygiene, then Cyber Trust Mark is really for companies that have gone beyond basic cyber hygiene practices. And there is actually a large range of companies that fall into this category, different companies of different shapes and sizes, business profiles, and serving different industry segments. So it is going to be challenging for us to prescribe a single ruler for all these companies. And what we have done is to take on a risk-based approach. So what you will see is that the mark is divided into 5 different tiers, from supporter all the way to advocate tier. And we have listed a list of cybersecurity preparedness domains, different numbers associated with different number of tiers. So for this reason, with this number of tiers, it helps you to basically decide what would be a risk assessment profile, and basically what would be the corresponding cybersecurity preparedness measures that you would need to put in place in order to be able to mitigate the risk. So the Cyber Trust Mark basically comes with a risk assessment framework, and there's a template for you to walk through to determine your cyber assessment from your risk assessment perspective, as well as from your preparedness assessment. Certification duration is for 3 years. And again, we have an independent assessor involved that will look into your documentation, as well as a verification of your implementation, as well as your effectiveness. So earlier on, I mentioned that the Cyber Trust Mark comes with a risk assessment. So this slide here just shows a couple of examples. Basically, for each of the standards that we have published, whether it's for Cyber Trust or Cyber Essentials, it comes with an accompanying spreadsheet. The spreadsheets for each are slightly different, and the one that I'm showing here is for Cyber Trust, where firstly, there is a risk assessment process. What we have done is to guide enterprises along by pre-populating the risk assessment template with the top or common risk scenarios in organizations. However, companies, as I mentioned, come in different shapes and sizes. So you would need to do a risk assessment to figure out what the impact and the likelihood of this risk insofar as your business environment is concerned. So you would do this once for your inherent risk, which is basically the risk profile before you put in place cybersecurity measures. And of course, you will also have to do it again in the form of a residual risk after you have put in place your cybersecurity measures. So what you would essentially get is basically a heat map that looks something like this and lets you know what your inherent risk is as well as your residual risk. So in terms of your cybersecurity preparedness assessment, there are different number of cybersecurity domains tagged to each tier. And as you walk through the spreadsheet, you will also think about the practices you have put in place and how it matches the different risk scenarios that we have in the spreadsheet. So at the end of the process, you should see a chart something like this that gives you a sense of where you are in terms of your cyber preparedness measures. And some of the parts in orange would show that you have maybe not reached a certain level. This is where you need to make a decision on risk treatment. Do you decide that you need to put in place further measures to further mitigate this risk so that it can bring the risk down? Or in some cases, maybe it's a business decision that you accept the risk. So I think in order to get certified, 3 simple steps. First step is actually to perform a self-assessment. The example I showed earlier in the spreadsheet is one of a guided risk assessment process for Cyber Trust. Cyber Essentials has something similar, but this is simpler in the form of a questionnaire. So as you walk through the questionnaire, it helps you to have good sense of your cybersecurity posture, where you are in the organization, and maybe some of the areas that you need to pay attention to. So even if you're not ready for certification, I would want to encourage companies to download a copy of the risk assessment or the questionnaire, because it helps you to actually think through and walk through your own implementation and identify some of the areas that you may need to put in further effort to mitigate the risk. So step 1 is risk assessment or self-assessment. Step 2 is then, if you're ready to go for certification, prepare the supporting documents that you need in order to substantiate the cybersecurity implementation. And finally, then appoint your certification body where they will be able to walk you through that independent assessment process. So I think I've come to the end of my very quick sharing on the Cyber Trust and Cyber Essentials Mark, and a little bit more details on how to go through the assessment process. What we have on the slide here is a QR code that leads you to CSA's website. It has a bit more details on who the appointed certification bodies are, and BSI is one of our appointed ones. For the Cyber Essentials certification, if you need help with some of the resources, we would be able to point you to cybersecurity toolkits, where you can download resources like templates to get started in substantiating your cybersecurity implementation. We also have curated a list of companies, both products, services, as well as solutions providers that can actually hold your hand and get you started in this journey. And with that, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Veronica. Okay, thank you, Veronica, for sharing. And here we have our first pool questions. Wow, it's an interesting matrix here. Okay, so we move to the next. To further elaborate what Veronica shared earlier, BSI is involved at the start of the journey with CSA on the formation of the cyber marks, and we're part of the working group. Not to really go into detail since Veronica has shared a lot with us, I would like to invite David.
Thank you, Alice, and thanks, Veronica. I really like the way you started that part of your presentation talking about the differentiation, the benefits, the positives here, because there are some real challenges. I mean, we've seen massive increases in ransomware attacks, this kind of thing. It really has escalated, particularly in the light of the pandemic and a change in the way we live and work. But the key point here is there is an opportunity. If you can demonstrate that you can be trusted, it is a huge differentiator for your business. So yes, you need to do this. You need to do this to protect your own organization, your shareholders, owners, your customers, and everyone you do business with. But it is a positive. If you do it and invest, you can stand out and actually have a differentiated edge. And that's what we're thinking about all the way through here. And part of our role, and like I said, my role specifically looking at global trust, is to collaborate with the thought leaders in this space, with Singapore's ambition to become the first smart nation. This makes this whole aspect of digital trust absolutely critical. So I've been very happy to work with Veronica and her team supporting the development of this program. And as it really now comes to life, I really would like to see similar things that have happened in the UK now, with this really strong ambition to make Singapore the best place to live, work, and to experience our lives digitally. So as we move into this phase now, the key point here really is that we're bringing all of this amazing investment in leadership, thought, knowledge, and boiling it all down into something that needs to be something that any organization can pick up and run with. So rather than go into any of the detail around the work that's been done, suffice to say that the best experts in the world have been working alongside Victoria's brilliant team to bring to you something that will help differentiate your business whilst also protecting your organization, protecting those that you do business with as well. So as we move on to the next phase then, Alice, we'll start to talk more about that journey with you. But remember, we're here to help, and what you're working with, I see as the absolute leading edge in practical digital trust for business. Thank you, Alice, over to you.
Thank you, David. So cybersecurity risk, it is real. It's a global problem. It's critical. Cybersecurity, like what Veronica and David shared earlier, it is critical to our business. It involves the protection of our IT systems and data from cyber threat. And cyber crimes have cost the economies hundreds of millions per year, and especially with the dynamics. The new norm of working and doing business is digital, and this increases our risk. And at BSI, we actually have invested heavily in information resilience, boosting our global expertise. And now we have a full range of solutions to support you to manage cybersecurity threat from the best practice frameworks such as ISO 27001, Cyber Essential, and through pen testing, incident response, and certified training course to help you to meet your cybersecurity requirements. So as what we share before we start the panel discussion, cyber attacks are real and they do happen in Singapore. So the cyber attacks are increasingly common in Singapore now. Last year in August, there's an insurance in Singapore that suffered ransomware attack. And in October, a healthcare platform's third-party vendor actually suffered a security breach, and it was discovered that the patient's personal data was actually compromised. And this year, a department store in Singapore also saw that its customer personal data leaked. And maybe some of one say that, oh, may not happen to us. But in the survey by Cisco, it said that 2 out of 5 SME in Singapore actually suffer cyber essential incidents for the last 12 months. There's 2 key points from me. Increased use of digital technologies, digital transactions of all kinds, and remote working impact on our business cyber risk as businesses now are operating beyond where they used to be. So I actually call the audience here now to think about what kind of information that you are storing on your cloud or intranet. The healthcare, for instance, industry, you are actually storing personal healthcare information, medical knowledge, research data, or even the system security data for the healthcare information system. And for how about the food and retail industry? The supplier data, your customer data, the ingredient, food supply, and so forth. So David, share with us for a global perspective in terms of cyber threat and the trend that you observe with us, David.
Yeah, thank you, Alice. So as I said, I want to keep a positive note to this. And what we see is huge advancements in technology. We see so many things now where we end up with software as a service and platforms that become readily available, cost effective. We're seeing the advent of artificial intelligence, moving on from robotic process automation, bringing in AI. All of this is a huge, huge opportunity. But what we've got to remember is everything that can be used for good can be used for bad. And the cybersecurity criminals, we're not talking about some guy sitting there in the dark with a hoodie on a laptop in Singapore. What we're talking about is global networks of professional criminals here. All that stuff that can be used for good can be used for bad. Ransomware, you can buy ransomware as a service now. It's got to that level of industrialization. So we've got to realize that if you have a digital presence, you will be attacked. And so I think the other key point that Veronica made is this isn't about just building a wall. It's about making sure you have the resilience there to minimize the impact of any attack and to make sure you can recover. That's exactly as important as actually putting that security part. If you remember the slide where Veronica showed the steps there, only one of those was about the security. The others were about building that overall resilient framework to make sure you're minimizing the impact of any breach and you can recover. That's just as important. So the key takeaways for me is just as we've all been able to advance with all this fantastic digital technology that's been more inclusive, allowing you access to so many things, it's done the same for the criminal world too. So you will be attacked. This is about responsible behavior to minimize the attacks chance of actually damaging your business and of those that you actually interact with. So don't think of this as some hacker sitting there somewhere, you know, trying to work out how to get onto your system. You've got to realize this is just as a global industry on the criminal side as it is on the positive side.
Thank you, David, for your sharing. Veronica, with what we share is happening around us, could you share with us the role and importance of the CSA Cyber Essential Mark and Trust Mark here?
I would say, I think it provides a guided approach in terms of cybersecurity certification. Particularly for the Cyber Essentials Mark, it's actually quite difficult to put together because it's actually something where there's no real industry consensus as to what constitutes cyber essentials. different people, if you talk to them, they will have a different perspective. So I would like to share a little bit about the journey, how we put this in place. We actually talked to and consulted a lot of people, from cyber professionals to standards professionals to end users. And generally, we find that we were actually balancing two things. The cyber professionals and all the ICT professionals would say, oh, this is not good enough. We need to add this, we need to add this, we need to add this. And by the time we took this and we asked the end user enterprises, they said, wow, this is unachievable and this is undoable. And we looked around across the world to see what others do. And Cyber Essentials in UK was a great example. The other one was Canadian baseline controls. Basically, most of these Cyber Essentials standard actually follow what we call a Pareto principle or 80-20 rule that says that actually, if you go for 100% security, whilst ideal, it's not going to be business friendly because of the cost. And therefore, if you want to meet the needs of SMEs, and let's be clear that a large portion of majority of economies actually are basically comprising SMEs, then we have to make it SME friendly. And the way to do it is actually to prioritize and figure out the 80-20, where you identify the common measures that help to be protected against the 80% of the attack. So I think in putting the Cyber Essentials mark together, what we have essentially done is a bit of that heavy lifting and the trade-offs that enterprises would need to invest in if they hadn't had such a mark. So I think essentially we are able to converge the industry to say these are the bare minimum basics that you would need to put in place. And we offer a guided process so that it's easy for enterprises. You don't have to run around and do the equivalent of the industry consultation that we did in order to derive what actually would make up cyber hygiene and cyber essentials. So now I'll talk a little bit about Trustmark. So Trustmark, I think, is also something like a risk assessment process. Again, there's no right and wrong way to do risk assessment. And for many companies that we know of, if they wanted to go for, let's say, ISO certification, they would actually hire an ISO consultant. ISO requires a risk-based approach, but doesn't prescribe how. The good thing is that this gives a flexibility and latitude to companies to do it in a way that makes sense for them. The downside is that sometimes companies may not know where to start. So I think in designing cyber trust, we took on firstly a similar approach of risk-based, simply because this is the trend and the shift in the industry, and we need to reflect that. And secondly, we did it in the form of a guided risk assessment process. So basically, step by step is to firstly do a risk assessment. When you do a risk assessment, you need to figure out what the risk scenarios are. And in coming up with a template, basically we identified the top risk scenarios that are generally happening in enterprises. So this guides the process. And we hope that this would then make it simple for enterprises to get started in their journey.
Thank you, Veronica, for your insightful sharing. It was really very good. And now we have our poll questions, and feel free to join us. And we saw there are questions that are showing in our chat box. We'll answer the questions towards our Q&A sessions. So feel free to throw in your questions along the way. Wow, interesting results.
Yeah, I mean, great to see, building trust at the top, which is exactly why I get out of bed every single day. It's all about building trust. So, it really is great to see that one coming out as top. But as this also shows, all of these things are important. And what Veronica said so well in just a few minutes represents a heck of a lot of work behind that. As she said, that tension between making something as rigorous to be really beneficial, but making it pragmatic to actually allow it to take hold, has been a huge task. And what this represents is the pragmatic way to build trust, to protect your reputation, to get recognition, to be competitive, and above all, to improve your cybersecurity. So that's exactly what we're here for to discuss. Now that was really good to see that building trust coming out on top.
Yeah, thank you, David, for your sharing. So next, we have David to share with you how BSI can support your organizations along your cyber journey to build trust in your ecosystem. David, please.
Thank you. So if we just move on to the next slide. Again, Veronica pointed out, this all starts with awareness. For Looking at the list of organizations that have joined us today, some of you I can see are already cyber experts, and what you're looking to do is work out how you can differentiate. For others here, I'm guessing you're more at this front end and just need some confidence that how real is this issue to me? Where do I start? And with BSI, we work all the way through from the awareness side, developing a competence, managing risk, compliance, and ultimately differentiating. The awareness starts with thought leadership, with webinars, workshops with industry, collaborating with organizations like CSA, and then building competence. As you'll find out, we have training and support locally tailored just for you guys here, specifically around this area, plus a whole massive breadth of training and competence development for individuals and organizations right the way across our whole portfolio. Managing risk. As Veronica said, we've got some risk-based assessments here, self-assessments, and these are great examples of that first step towards understanding and managing a risk. Demonstrating compliance. Why is that important? Because compliance to a standard is an international language, a common language and understanding of building trust at a particular issue you are addressing to a certain level of industry accepted consensus. And as Veronica said, that can be very, very hard to achieve. All the way through to differentiating with our mark of trust that says this is an organization or a product or a service that goes beyond and represents the absolute best in class. So the key point here is with BSI, wherever you are on that journey, from day one, wanting to understand what cybersecurity is about, all the way through to being confident that you are experts here and looking for someone to help you differentiate. Wherever you are on that journey, we're here to help you. Alice, back to you.
Thank you, David, for your sharing. So I will share with you about essential mark. I will not go through into details as a lot of the things on essential mark have been shared by Veronica earlier on, but in a very short, in a very nutshell, it's about a cybersecurity certification for organizations they are embarking on their cybersecurity journey, and it serves to recognize the organization has put in place some good cyber hygiene practice to protect their operations and their customers against common attack. So one of the questions you might ask, is there any grant? Yes, there is, by the CSA Early Bird Incentive. So a quick overlook, what are the 5 security measures for the essential mark? As what Veronica shared earlier, is on the accept, secured, update, and backup and response. And here we'll actually further elaborate what does it mean. So for asset-wise, we are looking at 3 components. One is the people, as they are the front line of the first defense. And then we have the hardware, software, and data. And then we look at the secure and protect side, what kind of protection you have in terms of your software, and what kind of access control you have in place, and also your secure configurations. And how often you update your software, and how do you do a backup of your data, and how do you respond? So in BSI, we actually have mapped out a journey that the customer will actually go through. We will go through together, the organizations will identify and define where the systems, where the business are more prone to cybersecurity threat. And that journey, like some of the questions you were asked, so I'm not sure what are the 5 measures. And that's why BSI have come up with a customized trainings to really address the 5 security measures and help you to build up your competency in that area. And then first of all, and the lastly one is the essential marked assessment form to check your readiness and where you are. We have built up modular training that are available to help organizations to build their competence before they apply the essential mark. And now, as of now, our application is through a manually, but in the near future, it will go through on the software platforms so that we faster turn around. And our verifier are actually 27K qualified verifier with experience in cybersecurity. And like what I shared earlier on together with my colleagues here is the BSI have the experience as a CREST accredited certification body for UK NCSC Cyber Essential and Cyber Essential Plus. What's really very exciting about us is that BSI, we have actually mapped out for essential marks a training outline to bridge the gap to support the small companies. So the training is to help SME who are less IT savvy, who are maybe the less security readiness, or they are at the early stage of their cybersecurity journey. And we will help them through the training to understand and their knowledge about essential mark and path their way to achieve it. So we are proud to say our first fast track module, which consists of module 1 to 6, is a fast track one. We have it on the 5th of May for 3 hours. And this session, who should attend? For enterprise, small companies who are interested how to embark on the journey to prove their maturity in the cyber security and cyber hygiene practice. And through here, you will learn about what is the essential mark, the certification journey, and the readiness tool, and what are the 5 categories about in the essential mark, and what is the next step to attain there, and how we're going to benefit. You understand its purpose, importance, as well as the requirement and how to start applying them within your business, which is really critical, and gain an understanding of the journey towards certifications and beyond. And these trainings will actually provide you a workbook, and upon completing the training, you will get an international recognized BSI Training Academy certificate. So these are the hybrid sessions. You can attend physically or online with us. And there's an early bird promotions. And if you registered by 30th April, there's a promotion price. So anyone who's interested can reach out to us. So this is the journey of the process applications that you will see from 1 to 5. And a perfect scenario is when you enroll, you will just need to enroll and pay the fee to BSI, and you submit the document that you need. Example in particular is a scoping documents and a self-assessment questionnaire with any related artifacts. And then our assessors, once received, will start review all the documents, leaving the self-assessment to the last. And the assessor will gain an understanding of your business context and risk profile, and by the time they reach the questionnaire. And the assessor will pass the judgment and update a certificate verification form, and then pass the form and all other documents to our certified reviewer. And the certificate reviewer will inspect all documents and award the certificate. So which means that BSI took a very cautious and stringent steps to assure that you are on that journey. So here we will have our pool questions 3 here. Wow, we see quite more than 50% of the audience here say that the training is essential. So we hope to see you. I saw just now there's some question raising about how much is the certification. So essential marks, there's 3 tier pricings, depending on the size of the FTE that you have. And there are also early bird incentive according to the number of your employees. The certification fee includes the essential marks, the desktop verification by BSI, and a one-time off complimentary retake. Because we understand it's the start of the journey. Some of the small companies may not really get an idea what it is. So we have this really retake for you so that you have a mind real assured that you can actually get through the journey with us. So now the first 20 clients are entitled the BSI pilot program incentive. So what is it? I believe that everybody is excited. So the BSI pilot programs, we have a monetary incentive of the certification price here, and there is a pilot recognition certificate for being the pilot companies to do so. And on top of that, we will share with you with our marketing teams and publish across our channels that you are the pilot company and how you benefit from it. So next, I will have my colleagues Ada to share with you about Trustmark. Ada, please.
Hi, good afternoon. Yeah, my name is Ada. I'm the Operation Delivery Manager from BSI. I will share with you about what is Cyber Trust Map. Just now we have here a lot of information from David and Veronica. So we also hear what sharing by David about AI automation. Over the past 2 years, we have experienced COVID-19, where a lot of organizations actually rush for digital transformation. This is where they suddenly transform themselves for the convention business model. They go for the digital business model right now. So in this cyber trust map, in this program, we can't stress enough that how important is the digital trust to build with our business partner. So the information inside this slide has been shared multiple times by David and Veronica. I don't want to repeat again. I just want to highlight some of the important benefit that it's going to bring to your organization. It's help you to improve your cybersecurity profile, improve the customer and business partners' confidence. So it helps you to increase your business resilience. What is business resilience? It actually demonstrates your capability to react and to respond when there is any business or incident happen. How fast you can recover your business, and how fast you can actually recover. You can perform your business back to normal. Okay, so if you're interested about whether is there any funding, I believe a lot of organizations are very interested in this topic. Yes, it will be covered and support by enterprise development grant. So you can actually go to the EDG website. There is a list of guidance given how to apply and how to submit your application. Alice, next, please. Okay, so just now we also hear from Veronica is about SMP Friendly. So there are 1,001 things to do to protect your information security, to protect your cybersecurity, but which one should you be focusing? The benefit of this program is that it is a guided approach for your organization to assess your cybersecurity risk and preparedness. So this approach helps you to meet your organization needs without over-investing. You can prioritize what will be your criticals, highest risk, and highest impact to your organization. So based on that, you can actually determine and decide what will be the mitigation you need to put in place to secure your information. Next, please. Okay, we have been hearing this is a pathway for information security management system, ISO 27000, but how does it link? Okay, this chart actually shows us. So by doing certifying to Cyber Trust Map, you actually meeting 77.9% of the requirements in the mandatory clauses of 27,000. Next, please. And there is 114 controls in ISO 27000. So by implementing Cyber Trust Map, it also helps you to meet 92.1% of the security controls objective that listed in the Annex A controls. So this is why we actually keep mentioning this is a pathway for you to achieve 27,000, ISO 27,000, because the whole framework itself actually built within the information security. Next, please. Okay, there are total 5 tiers in Cyber Trust Map, namely Cyber Trust Supporter, which for the organization with started digital maturity level is suitable for small and some micro enterprises, including digital native startups. Second, you will move on to the second tier for practitioner, which meant for the organization with started digital maturity level medium, and small organization. In the mid-tier, there is a promoter, organization with literate digital maturity, medium, and some large organization. Performer, organization with performer digital maturity level, they are mainly large and some medium organization. The highest tier we have is the advocate. This is the organization they are leading in digital maturity level. They are usually or typically a large organization or those they are operating in providers to regulated sectors. Next, please, Alice. Okay, as I mentioned, they are consist of total 22 cybersecurity preparedness domain. Each of the domain is focused on specific cyber teams. So they are, some domain are focusing in governance, policies and procedures. They are focusing on compliance, auditing, asset management, access control. So these are the domains that you can access with a specific cybersecurity preparedness statements for each domain, where you can put in place your mitigation and to mitigate your risk level. Okay, for the assessment, since different organizations actually having different business profile, the cybersecurity, the Cyber Trust Mark certification provide two parts of the assessment. Firstly, is understanding your cyber security risk profile. This is the risk approach. So we have seen just now the risk assessment template has been shared. There are few risk scenario. A common risk scenario has been shared for you to identify your risk profile. Secondly, based on that, we identify the relevant cybersecurity preparedness domain needed to mitigate this risk. Next, please. Okay, how do you start your CyberSafe Cyber Trust Mark certification? Firstly, you have to prepare the self-assessment form. Filling up the risk assessment based on the domain, the 22 domains, you assess your implementation. You can submit your application once you complete your self-assessment. You see the dotted line in the box itself is inclusive BSI training and pre-assessment or gap analysis. These are optional. If you think you need some help from BSI in training, in building up your competency and capability, then you can approach us for training courses. And if you require someone to go in and help you to do some pre-assessment before you submit your actual application, yes, you can do so. It is optional. After that, you can actually submit to BSI to start your journey of Cyber Trust Mark. So Cyber Trust Mark certification is similar to any of the ISO standard. They consist of two stages, stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1 is the document review. We will review the competence verifier or the auditor will review your documentation or artifact submitted. So that's include your policies, your documentation, your process, procedures. So that is the stage 1. After that, ideally, it will be about 1 month later. It could be 2 weeks to 1 month. Later, we will do a stage 2 audit. Stage 2 audit is to do the on-site verification, inspection on your implementation. How effective is your implementation of the policies or the processes, procedure put in place? So once you completed the stage 2 audit with no major non-conformities and you meet the requirements, you will pass the audit and get the certificate for the tier level that you are desired to go for. The certification is last for 3 years. Alice, next slide, please. Okay, this certification actually is lasts for 3 years. So every year there is a surveillance visit. Similar to any other ISO standards, every 12 months, there will be one surveillance audit. The purpose of this audit is to make sure the implementation you put in place, they are properly maintained, continually improved. Okay, so similarly for the year second and the third year, there will be a surveillance audit. After the end of the third year, there will be a recertification. Throughout the whole 3 years, if you think you need any refresher courses to train your team or to actually give them to recap what they have learned in the past, or also train your new member, you can also approach BSI for a training courses. Okay, how BSI can support your organization before and after the assessment. Before the assessment, there are trainings about the assessment. This training is suitable for C-suite executive, IT personnel, your cybersecurity teams, frontline employees, and employees whose daily activities involve cybersecurity. As you can see from the top risk scenario, human error or human factor is always a weakest link. That's why training of the people get them to understand what is cybersecurity, how to protect the company information. That is very important. For more information on training, you may contact BSI colleagues. After the assessment, partnering your organization along your cyber journey to build cybersecurity trust and to drive the business goal. We support you in training. We can support you to identify the gap for Cyber Trust Smart and the journey and help you to achieve your journey to international standard ISO 27000. Okay, so this table, Alice, you want to?
Yeah, I help you. Yes.
Okay.
No worries. So for the price, this is the pricing table for the Cyber Essential Trust. This is the range of price because we are going through the metric depending your business complexities and your IT complexities, and that is the range that we have for you. And just to reassure you, it's not only just our journey that we want to be with you, but we have a team of experts behind the scenes. That includes Ada, who is actually our presenter just now. And we have our lead auditors, Mr. Suibing, Dinah, and John. We have 4 BSI ISO 27K auditors behind the scenes. So next, we will actually discuss the case study. David, please.
Thanks, Alice. Bear in mind the time, I won't spend too much on this, but this just gives a couple of examples of the journey that we've supported clients on. First one I talk about is Barclays Bank, very famous high street bank here in the UK, wanted to really be the leader moving into the digital space. It started with Cyber Essentials. Then from a business perspective, you can imagine a bank, there's a lot of compliance, there's a lot of interest from shareholders and from regulators around best practice. So Cyber Essentials wasn't really enough to cover that. And they were one of the first banks, I think the first bank in the UK to go for full ISO 27000 certification as well, which helped reinsure at a business to business level. But what they also then were really struggling with was getting consumers, their actual clients, customers, to really come on board with digital banking as well. So we then put together a custom project based around our mark of trust, the Kite mark, and specifically focused on building trust around the app and the use of digital banking as well, which allowed them to really lead the way and demonstrate differentiation in the absence of a clearly regulated space around trust in digital banking as well. So again, it's a journey here and a stage that started with the essentials, went on to an international standard, and ended up with a customer-facing mark of trust. On to the next one, please, Alice. And here's another example, again, of going on that journey with the clients. One of our key clients, and key global clients, Xiaomi. You may be familiar with their technology and the Mi brand here. Again, really wanting to demonstrate thought leadership from a global perspective. Our initial engagement with them was really about advice and training around the standards. And then they too went for international recognition, not just with 27,000 for InfoSec, but building that up with cloud security and a privacy information management system. They saw that as essential for building trust in them as an organization, as well as in their products. But what they also wanted was to reach out to the consumer. And this is where, again, working with us on a mark of trust, consumer facing, to say, this product and this app can be trusted by you, that they have the appropriate security controls in place. So again, there's a journey here that might start with training. It might start with the essentials. It then goes on to a full global consensus standard recognition and on to differentiation as well. But the final one, onto the next slide, Alice, and this is really to reinforce why we are the ones really to help you here. We've also collaborated extensively with the UK police, the crime prevention initiatives. The reason for this, and going back to the whole point of the escalation in cybercrime, if you look at the amount of cybercrime that's actually exists, it's huge. The amount that's reported is less. The amount that's actually then followed up is less. And the amount that actually is taken to court and actually brought to justice is tiny, because this doesn't have global boundaries. It doesn't have jurisdiction boundaries. So the best way to deal with cybercrime is prevention. And in the UK, what we found was Cyber Essentials was a good step, but there were other steps needed on that path between Cyber Essentials and then full certification. So there we came up with our digitally aware and digitally resilient program and other programs to look at those who are providing services and security products to help them get recognized and build trust as well. So this is something, as I said, that we think about every day when we get up, which is this is what we do day in, day out. And that together with our mission to help you at the same time as really addressing a global need is why we're here to help, and we're the ones to help you with this. Alice, back to you.
Hi, thanks, David. So the top 3 things that we would like you to do today. First is assess what is critical to your business and stakeholder. Second, download the self-assessment from CSA website or reach out to us for it. And third is reach out for us to have an initial review on your business portfolio and to assist you on the journey. So now we'll open the floor for Q&A. So I have saw some interesting questions, and one of the questions is, with the organization perspective, it's good to have many accreditations as possible. It's just like virtualized badge and medals won by commander of the army. Interesting. And with so many things like ISO, DPTN, Trustmark, and so forth, obviously it's going to be an effort for organizations not only go through for certification, but to maintain them. And the question is, what can the firm do towards in not only minimize the cost of compliance, but also identify the synergy among the many credentials at the same time and still establish and retain trust? So anyone, speaker would like to pick up on these questions, to answer these questions?
Hi, Veronica here. I can cover the part about cyber trust together with DPTM. Interesting topic because I was actually just in a different webinar with our colleagues from IMDA overseeing DPTM. So basically, I think the two are actually related, but not quite exactly the same. Because if you think about it, cybersecurity and data protection are related in the sense that if you put in place the good cyber hygiene measures, it helps you to protect against various things. And one of the things would include personal data breaches, which is what DPTM is about. So in a way, if you think about it, good cyber hygiene helps you and it's a precursor for protection against data protection related breaches. So when we look at in cyber trust, when we look at data from the perspective of cybersecurity, we look at it from a broader perspective. It is sometimes about your company data, not necessarily always personal data, but also includes personal data. Whereas DPTM focuses very much on personal data protection. So for companies which maybe are at the stage of digitalization and need cybersecurity, but maybe not looking too much into personal data at that point in time, the cyber marks would be relevant. However, if the company is at the stage where they're using a lot of data extensively and processing and managing personal data, that is where DPTM would come in. So if we were to fold the two into the same thing, what it means is a larger scope of certification, and it would probably not be so good for companies who, let's say, not looking into personal data. So in a way, by having two marks, there is a certain granularity and helps to better meet the company's needs. However, there will also be companies that actually need to deal with both cybersecurity as well as personal data. So at least where this is concerned, what we have done is that there are common companies that are both assessment bodies for DPTM as well as certification bodies for Trustmark. And when we poll the certification bodies we spoke to that handle both, I think most of them were quite happy to handle things like integrated assessment, so that in one process, in terms of the paperwork and all the audits and so on, they're able to try to optimize it so that it doesn't become so cumbersome and that you see this as a 2 times the effort. So I think this is where I'll sort of explain the differences between the marks and the areas of focus, the synergies, and how through the certification bodies that handle both, we hope to optimize the process and make it simpler for organizations.
Thank you, Veronica. How about David? I saw that you want to add on something earlier on.
It really just thinking more about the journey going up to 27,000 then as well. What we see here is this is an incremental. So this isn't, oh, I have this badge and I'll have 27 under this. What you've got here is something that are steps along a route. So that way, again, I don't think there's a need then to have, I want to collect every badge. I think you've got to see really what these particular medals really mean, and on that journey that you're going on as an organization. And for some, as Veronica said, it might well be that the essentials mark is all they need. That actually addresses their business risk. For others, it's a stepping stone and it's the first step. They're doing the Pareto 80-20 rule covering, but they know their goal is to get to ISO. But doing these along the way are actually helping prepare, I think, to get to the point where you can achieve that international consensus best practice certification as an ultimate goal. But don't think of these as separate. These are just incremental steps along the journey.
Okay, thank you. We have another very relevant question. One of the questions is here that my company is already 27K certified, but I would like to get certification for branding and awareness purpose as our business focus on mainly local customers. So is it easier for us to get certified for Trustmark or perhaps examine for our trainings? I would like to answer these questions. The training is not mandatory, it's optional. And when you already have 27 certificates, means that you have some policy and your structure in place. It's definitely easier for you to obtain the Trustmark. So definitely, I think it's easier for you because since you already have a certified, and it also depends on the Appendix A, the controls, whether you are covered or not. Because some of the things that is not, because in 27K, the Appendix A controls are not mandatory. So it depends when the company, when they go for the 27K certifications, whether they have opt for this. But in the Trustmark, they have already laid out what they are covered with. So this is the difference. I hope that answers your questions.
And
Okay.
Alex, just to further on that's
Yes.
a really important point as well. And I think, as Veronica was saying at the outset, when you're looking at differentiating, it does depend really. If you're looking, there are some areas where business to business in certain industries, having a whole load of numbers that say ISO 27001 means something. But to others, to the general public and other businesses, that doesn't resonate as much as a mark that says there simple words about cyber and trust. So that is a very, very relevant point. And yes, it may be that you say, oh, I've got 27,000, do I need this? It really then is about who are you messaging and what is that message really about? That's where something that just says cyber and trust and essentials and these kind of terminology is something that resonates far, far more than a number albeit as we know and love 27,000 in BSI very, very much indeed. We wrote the thing. Well, we wrote the initial thing that became there. We've got to understand what really tends to resonate is words around trust and marks and essentials.
Okay, thanks, David. So I think because we are running short of time, there are a few questions coming out. What I would suggest is that we'll receive your questions and you reach out to us. We'll answer your questions and attend to you individually. So in a nutshell, we will wrap up here. The cybersecurity is not just a technical issue. It is really, cybersecurity awareness is really essential at all levels within the organizations. And all companies should consider their risk profile when deciding which certification to go for here. And Cyber Essential, in this case, Essential Mark, may be more suitable for companies who are just embarked on their journey for cybersecurity on the digital journeys, because this is a more simplified approach by prioritizing 5 cyber hygiene areas for company to focus on. And if your company's process are more digitized and more complicated, and this is where you can have looking at the trust mark. So in a nutshell here, one takeaway from us is the threat is real, and vaccine reduce the likelihood of it happening and reduce impact. But having the essential mark and trust mark, it's like the trust, it's like an insurance to minimize your risk with a health, with a good lifestyle habits, and if you really get infected, the impact is less. So the second point is the basic essential level is relatively easy to implement and will protect you from many of the common attacks. And so why will you not reassure your colleagues, clients, investors, and all you do business with that you have the essential covered? And wherever you are in this journey, we are here to help and support you and to get to the point where you can differentiate and build your business and build a good cyber hygiene and to build a better society. So in our closing remark here, I thank you all the speakers today, all the audience, our guests and participants. We thank you for your time and attention today, and there'll be a feedback form sent to you at the end of the webinar. And feel free to reach out to us, and BSI is happy to attend to your queries and have a wonderful evening.